Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling Atomic Habits by James Clear,
Oh, yeah.
which has become a bit of a Bible
Hmm.
for those of us fascinated by how
Yeah.
tiny tweaks can lead to massive changes.
It really is a fascinating look at the science behind
Yeah.
why we do what we do.
Hmm.
And I think what Clear does so well is that he doesn't just offer like
Right.
surface level advice. He
Yeah.
really dives into like the neurological and psychological underpinnings of habits,
Yes.
which I think is so crucial for actually making lasting change.
Absolutely. And what really hooked me from the start was Clear's own story.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't some guru preaching from an ivory tower,
Right.
like he walks the walk.
He does.
A horrific baseball injury in high school,
Oh, wow.
broken bones,
Really?
detached retina, the whole works.
Oh, my
It's
God.
forced him to rebuild his life literally from scratch.
Yeah, it was during that grueling recovery
Right.
that he really started to understand the power of small wins.
You know, he couldn't immediately be the athlete he was before,
Right.
but he could focus on those tiny improvements each day,
Mm-hmm.
and those built upon each other.
Right.
And he applied that not just to physical therapy, but to his academics,
Yeah,
eventually becoming an academic All-American.
it's incredible.
It's proof that consistency compounds,
Mm-hmm.
even when the initial steps seem insignificant.
It's so inspiring, and it really sets the stage for the whole book.
It does.
So let's dig into the meat of it.
Okay.
One of the core frameworks in Atomic Habits
Yeah.
is the 4 laws of behavior change.
Okay.
These aren't just random tips,
Yeah.
This is a systematic way to understand how habits form and how we can intentionally design better ones.
Yeah, and that first law, make it obvious,
Okay.
is all about awareness.
Right.
It's like shining a spotlight on those automatic behaviors we do without thinking,
Yeah.
the cues that trigger them,
Mm-hmm.
the routines that they're embedded in.
Clear even suggests this technique called pointing and calling,
I've heard of that.
which sounds silly,
Yeah.
but it's incredibly effective.
Okay.
You literally verbalize your actions, bringing them into conscious awareness.
I've tried that.
Have you?
And it's almost embarrassing how many mindless habits
Right.
I catch myself doing. It's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm opening the fridge again, even though I just ate.
Exactly.
But that awareness is step one, right?
Absolutely. Without that,
Yeah.
you're trying to change a system that you don't even fully understand.
Okay.
So once you see those cues and routines clearly,
Yeah.
you can start to modify them.
Okay, so we're aware of the bad habit.
Yeah.
Now, how do we swap it for a good one?
Okay.
That's where the second law comes in.
Right.
Make it attractive.
Make it attractive.
This is where things get really interesting
Okay.
because it delves into the neurochemistry of motivation,
Oh, yeah.
particularly the role of dopamine.
It's not about forcing yourself to do things you hate. That's willpower depletion waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Clear suggests we leverage our brain's reward system
Huh.
by making desired habits appealing.
Okay.
One way he does this is through temptation bundling.
Okay. I admit when I first heard that term,
Yeah.
I pictured something a bit more
Right.
risque,
Yeah.
but it's actually genius.
It is.
It's about linking an action you need to do
right.
with one you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I used to hate doing laundry,
Okay.
but then I started listening to audiobooks only while folding clothes.
Okay.
It turned a chore into me time.
That's a perfect example, and it highlights how we can work with our brain's natural inclinations instead of fighting them.
Mhm.
You're not denying yourself pleasure.
Right.
You're strategically pairing it
Right.
with something that needs to get done.
So we've made the habit obvious.
Okay.
We've made it attractive.
Uh-huh.
But there's still that hurdle of actually doing it day after day.
Right.
This is where I personally get tripped up.
That's where the third law, make it easy, comes in.
Okay.
It's all about reducing friction.
Okay.
Think about it. The easier something is to do,
Yeah.
the more likely we are to do it. Clear borrows from the world of design and engineering here,
Oh, okay.
emphasizing environment design.
He uses the example of Japanese car manufacturers
Yes.
who meticulously redesigned their workspaces
Exact.
to minimize wasted movement, right?
Every wasted step,
Wow.
every unnecessary reach adds friction.
I see.
So applying this to habits,
Okay.
we need to make the path of least resistance lead to our desired outcome.
Okay.
So if you want to work out in the morning,
Yeah.
lay out your clothes the night before,
Makes sense.
want to drink more water,
Mm-hmm.
keep a full glass on your desk.
It sounds so simple.
It does.
But I can see how those little things remove those mental barriers.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
not about relying on motivation.
Yeah.
It's about setting yourself up for success
Exactly.
before you even have to think about it.
And this ties in beautifully.
With one of my favorite clear strategies,
Oh, yeah.
the 2-minute rule.
I love that one.
It's almost deceptively simple,
Yeah.
but it acknowledges that the hardest part is often starting.
Mm,
So instead of aiming for a 30-minute workout,
right.
just commit to putting on your workout clothes.
Okay.
Instead of writing a chapter, just open your document and write one sentence.
That's a great one.
You're tricking your brain
Yeah.
into getting over that initial hurdle.
Right.
And often that's enough to build momentum.
Okay, that's a game changer.
It is.
Because I think so many of us get overwhelmed by the enormity of the goal,
Yeah,
and that prevents us from even taking the first step.
exactly. This is about building those small wins,
Mm.
which leads us perfectly into the fourth law.
Mm.
The fourth law, make it satisfying,
Okay.
is where we seal the deal.
Okay.
It's about ensuring that our good habits are actually rewarding,
Right.
which loops back to that dopamine hit we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You know, our brains are wired.
To seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Right.
So we need to make sure those good habits feel good.
This is where I think a lot of traditional self-help advice falls short.
Oh, really?
It's all about grit and discipline,
right.
which can work for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Atomic Habits acknowledges our human need
Right.
for gratification,
Yes.
which I think makes it so much more sustainable.
Exactly.
It's not about becoming a robot.
Right.
It's about working with our natural wiring.
Exactly. And one of the simplest yet most effective ways to do this
Yeah.
is through habit tracking.
Okay.
Whether it's an app,
Mm-hmm.
a spreadsheet,
Right.
or just marking X's on a calendar.
Yeah.
Visually seeing your progress gives you that sense of accomplishment. It's like you're building a chain of evidence for your commitment,
Yeah.
which in itself releases a little dopamine boost.
It's funny how something so simple can be so
Mhm.
powerful.
I know.
I used to think habit trackers were a bit cheesy. But once I started using one, I realized it taps into something primal.
It does.
It's like our hunter-gatherer brain saying,
Yeah.
hey, you're on a roll, keep going.
And it plays into Clear's emphasis
Okay.
on immediate rewards.
Okay.
We're not wired for delayed gratification.
Hmm.
So finding ways to make the habit itself satisfying,
Yeah.
even in small ways, is crucial.
Right.
And this connects to another one of his rules
Okay.
that I find incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Never miss twice.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Life happens.
Nah.
We slip up.
It happens.
But the key is to get back on track as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about perfection. It's about building that consistency.
That takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
It does.
Because so often we miss a day
Yeah.
and we think, well, I've blown, I might as well give up.
Right.
But Clear reframes it as a blip, not a catastrophe.
Exactly. It's about building resilience,
Right.
not beating yourself up.
Hmm.
Now, remember earlier when we talked about Clear's own transformation after his injury?
Yeah.
That wasn't just about physical recovery. It was
Right.
about his identity shifting. This is another key concept he emphasizes.
Right.
Habits aren't just actions.
Right.
They shape who we believe we are.
This is where things get really deep, right?
It does.
Because it's not just about doing, it's about becoming.
Right.
I struggle with that too.
Really?
I have these aspirations,
Yeah.
but there's a disconnect between who I feel I am
Yeah.
and who I want to be.
I see.
How does Clear suggest bridging that gap?
Well, he argues that every action
Okay.
is like casting a vote for the type of person you want to become.
Okay.
So if you want to be a writer, you don't wait for inspiration. You write.
Right.
Every word you put down is a vote for your writer identity.
Okay.
If you want to be healthier.
Yeah.
Every healthy meal, every workout is a vote for your healthy self.
Right.
The evidence mounts,
Yeah.
and gradually your self-perception shifts.
So it's not about trying to force a change in belief.
Exactly.
It's about living the actions lead the way.
Yes.
That feels so much more empowering.
It is, and it takes the pressure off of having to feel a certain way before you start.
Yeah.
You take action, the evidence builds, and your identity follows.
Right.
Clear talks about how he didn't initially see himself as a writer,
Oh, wow.
but he kept writing, publishing articles,
Mm-hmm.
and gradually the evidence was undeniable.
Right.
He became a writer because he acted like one.
This is making me rethink so many of my own stalled goals.
Really?
I've been waiting to feel like a runner
Yeah,
before committing to a running program.
right.
But maybe it's the other way around.
Maybe?
Maybe I need to lace up my shoes
Yeah,
and let those runs cast the votes for my runner identity.
that's the spirit.
I like that.
And this leads beautifully into another core concept.
Okay.
Clear introduces the power of systems over goals.
Okay.
Goals are about the destination, but systems are about the process. He argues that obsessing over goals can be limiting.
How so?
You reach the goal, and then what?
Right.
But if you focus on building a system of good habits, the results take care of themselves.
Okay. I need an example.
Okay.
Because my brain is a bit goal-oriented, I'll admit.
Okay, sure.
How would this system over goals approach
Right.
work in practice?
Let's say your goal is to lose 20 pounds.
Okay.
That's fine as a target,
Yeah.
but it doesn't tell you how
Right.
a system would be the collection of habits that support that goal.
Right.
Meal prepping, healthy lunches, walking 30 minutes each day,
Right.
tracking your calories, etc.
Right.
You're not fixated on the number on the scale.
Yeah.
You're focused on building the habits that will naturally lead you there.
That makes so much more sense.
It does.
Because often we hit the goal
Yeah.
and then slide back into old habits.
Exactly.
Because we haven't changed the underlying system.
Precisely. Systems create consistency.
I like that.
Now let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about those pesky bad habits
Oh, yeah.
that seem to have a life of their own.
Mm-hmm.
We've made the good ones obvious, attractive,
Right.
easy, and satisfying.
Yeah.
But how do we make the bad ones less appealing?
Claire has some interesting strategies for this, too.
Right.
He doesn't shy away from the fact that we're wired
Right.
to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we use that to our advantage
Right.
when trying to break a bad habit?
Well, one of the most effective ways to break a bad habit
Okay.
is to flip the script
Huh.
on those 4 laws we've been talking about.
Okay.
So instead of making it obvious, attractive,
Right.
easy, and satisfying,
Mm-hmm.
we do the opposite.
So we're making the bad habit invisible,
Yes.
unattractive,
Yeah.
difficult, and unsatisfying.
Exactly.
It sounds a bit like reverse psychology for our own brains.
It is.
Okay, I like it.
So let's say you're trying to cut back on mindless snacking.
Okay.
You'd start by making those unhealthy snacks less obvious.
Out of sight, tucked away in a cupboard.
Right.
Not sitting temptingly on the counter.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Really?
I can see how that would reduce
Yes.
those automatic impulses.
Then you make those unhealthy snacks less attractive.
Okay.
This could involve reframing your thinking about them
Okay.
instead of focusing on the momentary pleasure.
Yeah.
Remind yourself of how sluggish and bloated you feel afterwards.
Oh, so it's like associating
Yes.
the bad habit with a negative feeling,
Exactly.
making it less appealing on a subconscious level.
Precisely. Next, make the bad habit difficult.
Okay.
This could involve things like keeping those unhealthy snacks out of the house altogether.
Right.
Or placing them in a hard-to-reach spot.
Right.
You're increasing the friction, the effort required to indulge in that bad habit.
This reminds me of the concept of commitment devices,
Oh, yes.
where you intentionally make it harder to engage in the undesired behavior,
Exactly.
like signing up for a gym membership across town.
Or putting your credit card in a block of ice in the freezer
Yes.
to prevent impulse online shopping.
Those are great examples.
Yeah.
It's about anticipating your weaknesses
Right.
and setting up roadblocks to make it harder to fall back into old patterns. And finally, you make the bad habit unsatisfying.
Okay.
This could involve implementing consequences for yourself,
Okay.
like having to do a set of burpees every time you indulge in the bad habit.
Oh, my God.
Or you could use a habit contract
Yeah.
where you make a public commitment to change
Okay.
and establish accountability with a friend or family member.
So we're leveraging our brain's desire for reward
Exactly.
and aversion to pain to break free from those stubborn bad habits.
Yes,
That's brilliant.
it is.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into atomic habits, there's
Okay.
one concept I want to touch on that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
The Goldilocks rule.
Oh, yes. That's a good one.
It's this idea that we experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of our current abilities.
Yes.
Not too easy, not too hard, but just right.
It's that sweet spot.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about that concept is it connects to the idea of flow states.
Oh, yeah.
Those moments when you're completely absorbed in a task
Yeah.
and time seems to melt away.
I love those.
Clear suggests that finding that sweet spot of challenge
Yeah.
is crucial for maintaining motivation and avoiding boredom.
That makes sense because if something is too easy,
Right.
we get bored and lose interest.
Yeah.
But if it's too hard, we get frustrated and give up.
Exactly.
So it's about finding that balance
Yes.
where we're challenged enough to stay engaged,
Right.
but not overwhelmed to the point of quitting.
Exactly. And this applies to building habits too.
Right.
I can see how setting the bar too high
Yeah,
could lead to discouragement and ultimately failure.
absolutely.
So it's about breaking down those big daunting
All
goals
right.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah.
Remember the 2-minute rule? Uh-huh.
That's a perfect example of finding that sweet spot of challenge.
Yeah.
You're starting small, building momentum,
Mhm.
and gradually increasing the difficulty as you progress.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into atomic habits today,
Okay.
what's the most important message you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we all have the power to change our lives
Mm-hmm.
through the power of small habits.
Yeah.
It's not about making grand gestures or relying on willpower.
Right?
It's about understanding the science of habit formation
Mm.
and applying it to our daily lives.
Well, I love that.
It's about embracing the idea that small changes consistently applied can lead to remarkable results.
It's about believing in the power of tiny gains and trusting the process.
Yeah.
So what's one small habit you, the listener, can start building or breaking today?
Yeah.
Choose one thing, apply the strategies we've discussed,
Yeah.
and watch as the compound interest of self-improvement works its magic.
I love it.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.